Hello, my name is Leslie Valois, and I will be talking about the Bracero Program. Imagine becoming a slave when you migrate to the land of dreams, the land of the American dream. This is what workers from the Bracero Program had to endure. They were treated like slaves as they got paid barely enough money to survive and lived in inhumane conditions. The Bracero Program began because of World War II. It brought Mexican laborers to the United States to fix wartime production shortages. After an executive order known as the Mexican Farm Labor Program established. This agreement between Mexico and the United States allowed millions of Mexican men to work legally in the U.S. on a 6-month short-term labor contract. Braceros worked mainly in agriculture areas in the Southwest and on the West Coast. They worked for 10 to 12 hours a day in extreme temperatures. They weren't able to drink water until they achieved their given goal, and they were exposed to deadly chemicals, which include pesticides, which can be carcinogens or affect nervous systems. The program continued for 22 years until December 31, 1964. It ended because mechanization became more widespread. The program resulted in an influx of undocumented and documented laborers, 22 years of cheap labor from Mexico, and remittances to Mexico by braceros. An interview conducted by interviewer Anais Acosta showed the challenges that braceros endured as part of their blue-collar job. It showed the injustice that not only Ramon Hill faced, but that of many other bracero workers. They barely got paid enough money to survive or to send sufficient remittances back to their families in Mexico. They were exploited and lived in degradable and unlivable human conditions. There were about 250 people per room, and most slept on the floors. They had to pay surcharges for room and board and their food. These braceros had to face discrimination during the selection process, in which they were examined to see how healthy they were. They were stripped naked and fumigated for lice with harsh pesticides. They got humiliated and were treated like slaves offered in slave markets. In Acosta's interview, interviewee Ramon Hill shared his testimony on what it was like to be part of the Bracero Program. He worked at South Pacific in Sacramento, California, in which he organized material for the railroad. He got paid bi-weekly and said his wage was $8.16 per hour. This wage was more than the minimum wage for braceros at the time. The approximate minimum wage was 50 cents to $1 per hour. Agriculture workers got paid per crate or whether they finished their given goal on time. Although he got paid fairly well, he was exploited as he was supposed to have savings account at a bank, but he was never able to retrieve the money that was supposedly saved. They were promised to receive the money from the savings account once their contract had terminated. He found out about the Bracero Program, and contractors would go to Tampico, Mexico looking for people to hire. This was a common occurrence as companies would purposely wait in train stations to recruit people to become braceros. The Bracero Program became well known in Mexico cities as contractors spread the word of how amazing it would be to work in the United States. They also advertised it by publishing it in newspapers. Contractors promised health care, a better wage, a job, and a place where they could live. Most contractors were looking for people who were less educated so they could be easier to exploit. The more workers they recruited showed how braceros became replaceable. This is how they tamed braceros, by taking away the right to fight for better living conditions, as they knew they could be easily replaced. Like many braceros, Jill expected to live the American dream. They weren't explained what their job would look like until they arrived in their designated cities. Until then, they were told how much they would get paid, what they would work as, and where they would live. They would stay in the designated area until the contract was over. After 6 months, the contract expired and they had to return back to their home country. Like many braceros, Joe, who liked living the American dream, migrated back illegally into the United States after the Bracero Program ended. The termination of the Bracero Program brought an influx of illegal immigrants who sought jobs, better wages, and living conditions than those found in their home country. During the Bracero Program, there was a significant decrease in illegal immigration as the U.S. provided a legal path of entry for Mexican farm workers. But after the Bracero Program ended in 1964, it marked the beginning of the significant increase in illegal immigration, which can still be seen today. Although Jill had a good experience working as a bracero, his story doesn't showcase the experience of other braceros. It's important to keep in mind that everyone's experience is different.